Hello and welcome to the African Tech Roundup, episode 97. Now, this is where we round up the week's most important tech, digital, and innovation news from across the African continent. My name is Andile Masugu, and I'm really glad you could join me. And for the first time in a long time, I won't be rolling solo on this episode because I ran into a good mate of mine in Cape Town a few days ago at a conference that we were both speaking at, and we had such a great conversation about, well, a lot of stuff, really. And I thought it'd be awesome to have, chat through some of the big stories of the week and just talk, man. And so you might hear some, noise in the background. That's because we're on location. We had to kind of work out where we could, where our paths could cross and all that. Ladies and gentlemen, please, I give you the marketing genius, the very Zambian author, speaker, and my very good friend, Musa Kalenga. What's up, bro?
Hey, man. How you doing? And hello, Africa. Tell me how you do it.
You took us back with that one.
I had to take it back to the age, right?
I know you had to do the thing. We know each other way back. I know this guy when he had cornrows in his head, he was dancing hip-hop, and then he became a serious operator in corporate marketing. Yeah, it's just incredible to have you on the show, and it almost feels like a full circle moment for me.
Absolutely. It's been how many years now? Huh? Lots of different lifetimes within those years, but it's good to be back, and well done on the show, man. This is fantastic. You've kept it going. Episode 97. That's hella good, man. Hella good. So thank you for having me here, man.
Absolute pleasure. And of course, to those of you who don't know him as well as I do, you might know him from back in the day when he had this amazing hybrid agency. I think it was called Monate Fellas, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that was where it all started. Trying to break the mold even back then. So we were trying to disrupt research at the time, collecting data on mobile phones, which morphed into IHOP, which morphed into a short stint at Nedbank, and then my last stint, which was at Facebook as the client partner for the Africa business.
Yeah, dog. And of course, you put that mantle down to pick up your own damn thing, dude.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a good way to put it, my own damn thing.
So that's what he's doing right now. Man has just authored an amazing book. You need to go get it right now. Almost a year ago, we were sponsored by Audible. And your book needs to get on there, man.
Well, give me the connect. It's been out for a few months now, so people are reading it. But yeah, whatever platforms there are, it's important for us to share our stories. I'm passionate about that. So hopefully that book is able to inspire someone or create a thought or spark something, But yeah, get it if you can.
And what's it called? Tell the people.
It's called Ladders and Trampolines. So, it's just anecdotes and stories based on some of my experiences in corporate South Africa, some of the ventures that I started, and essentially it's just there to inspire people. It's a bit of a story about my life, but I think the story is right in the beginning. So I'm working on another book, funny enough. So breaking news again. So hopefully there'll be a nice follow-up to that towards the end of this year as well.
Oh, snap. That's awesome. And so this is what you can look forward to. We're going to talk through some of the bigger, news stories coming out of the last few weeks, but we'll also get to some of the things we talked about at FCB Africa Conference 2017, where we were both invited to speak. You said some incredible things that got me thinking, and I had questions about, and we're going to talk about that a little later on. We'll get through the news. So you stick around. If you're listening right now, thank you so much for joining us. But let's do this first. This episode of the African Tech Roundup is brought to you by GoDaddy. GoDaddy makes registering domain names fast, simple, and most importantly, affordable. Now, they're the world's largest domain registrar. They're trusted by over 13 million customers around the globe, and they provide everything you need to get your business set up online, including award-winning 24/7 support. Now, to save 30% on a new domain name or to use any of their other services, go to trygodaddy.com/AfricanTech. Now, that's trygodaddy.com/AfricanTech to save yourself 30%. Before we talk about some of the big headlines from the past few weeks, I need to let you, Musa, know, as well as everyone else listening, in fact, remind our listeners that Afrobytes Tech Conference is going down in Paris. It's definitely the place to be between June 8th and 9th, 2017. Now, we're really honored here at the African Tech Roundup to be one of their partners this year, and I'll be speaking alongside a killer list of individuals like Toro Herrero of Draper Darkflow VC, Aaron Fu of Nest VC, Yinka Adegoke of Quartz, Annie Mutamba of Meridia Partners, Edith Bro of the World Bank, Inalua Aboyeji of Flutterwave, Claude Granitsky of True Africa, and so many more. You get the picture. Our friends at Afrobytes have asked me to share two important points of information. One, Super early bird registration closes on March 15th, 2017. So get a hustle on to get your tickets at dope prices. And number two, while it was previously announced that the event would be happening at the new Station F campus, a pipe burst, would you believe it, in the sub-levels underneath the venue. This was just a few weeks ago. It flooded the whole place. So the world's biggest startup campus won't actually be ready to open in time for Afrobytes conference, but not to worry. The event will still go ahead as planned. It will now be hosted at the prestigious MEDEF, which is, of course, the home of the Federation of France's largest companies. So it's all systems go, regardless, right? So we can't wait to see you there. Be there or be square. I know you've got a hectic schedule, my guy, but I hope we can convince you to make a turn to Paris.
That would be nice, right? I'll take my wife as well to justify the trip.
Yeah, it might just be a holiday real quick.
Yeah, man, of course.
Okay, now all the commercials out of the way. Let's talk news. Come on now. 3310, Nokia 3310, my very first phone ever, 2002. I remember all the begging I had to do to convince my dad that I needed this phone. I was in my second year of varsity, and this brand new phone pretty much changed my life. I still have such nostalgic memories about this phone. So news that Nokia would be launching a new one. I said on the show that I'd be buying this phone when it came out. But that's before I actually saw what it looked like. And yeah, it wasn't what I expected. What do you make of this whole thing?
So yeah, it's interesting. So I mean, I never actually had the Nokia 3310 in its early format. So I was an Ericsson boy back then, funny enough. But everybody that did own one and heard the news that it's coming back has been really, really on this tip about wanting to support and get back. But based on what you're saying, nostalgia. So I do know that a lot of people have been disappointed by what they saw. But I do think they will get a little bit of market share. I mean, Nokia's been struggling, as we all know. The features of the phone itself, I'm pretty sure you can tell a bit more. I'm not close to detail. But just based on the nostalgia element and being able to market something that once was a legend, it's like creating Jordan 19s, you know? It's kind of that thing that someone will always want to get, even though they don't really, use the functionality. But, I suppose jury's out as to whether it'll work in our market, in our context, right?
So let's talk about what's on it. Like you said, some of the key things, a slightly larger screen, color screen that would put to shame my old 3310. In fact, if I were to have a phone like that back in those days, I'd have gotten all the girls. Not that I was trying that hard. But yeah. So any case, no. Let's just say it's a lot more than the Dumbphone of years past. It's got an earphone jack. It's got 16 gigs of memory. What else can I remember about it? Well, it's got 2G access and not 3G. It's got an earphone jack, obviously, so you can listen to your music. Large enough memory to allow you to go jogging with your stash of music, that kind of thing. But it won't host any apps. It won't allow any apps to platform there. And then most importantly, that legendary battery life of 22 hours that they're promising people will actually get. I don't know if people are using their phones nearly as little as we did back in the day. So I don't know if 22 hours is guaranteed if you're going to be playing Snake all day and listening to music. So yeah, that's what you're getting.
Does it have Snake though? Have you confirmed that?
Absolutely confirmed. It's got Snake, a very colorful format of the game. It's got Tetris 2. It's got a couple of games on there. So I'm sure you'll kill that battery quite dead if you play it all day. But I think, to me, primarily the main thing is there's a vast difference between the needs of the developing world and the developed world. It's pretty cool in America and Europe and in the developing world to sort of, I want to disconnect. Because you got free Wi-Fi almost everywhere you go. If I'm in a taxi, I'm trying to let my mother know I'm safe and I'm getting home. It's raining in Joburg. You know what I'm saying? If I'm the average sort of African, I'm not trying not to have WhatsApp on my phone. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, because as you said, in a developed world, disconnecting is an option, right? Whereas here, disconnecting is our reality. Like, not many people have access. So while yes, it may be very funky and cool, and I also feel it. I mean, as a consumer, often I turn off my phone, turn off my data as much as possible. And I've thought a number of times about getting a device that's pretty one-dimensional. But that may work there. The question is whether it's sufficient to be able to to launch and to have a phone like that actually compete. So will someone use it as a second device? Do you use this as your primary device? Because the reality is, even when you want to disconnect, you still need to connect at some point. So I suppose that'll be interesting whether people actually substitute to this as a primary device or whether they use it as a secondary device for the novelty factor, which I think is more likely the case. And how long that'll last is also questionable.
So Africa, you tell us, is this the kind of phone you would opt for over the many now relatively affordable options you have between low-end feature phones and high-end smartphones. Now, there's quite a range of that's available in that space. Now, would you choose this over that? You let us know. Give us a shout on Twitter at African Roundup. Moving on now, it's been shocking the past few weeks as far as corporate corruption is concerned. Firstly, you've got the likes of Barclays Africa Group admitting to colluding with at least 12 other banks to fixing the price of the rand. Yes, and then there's the small matter of the Samsung Group's chairman and company heir, J.Y. Lee, being arrested and charged with bribery. In fact, he'll be on trial in the coming week in a case that's implicated South Korea's now impeached President Park Geun-hye. Then, meanwhile, in South Africa, some media reports have surfaced alleging that SAP South Africa Managing Director Lawrence Kandaswamy has been involved in a $38 million software purchase and kickback scandal. I must stress alleged, okay? Now, the scandal is apparently linked to the Department of Water and Sanitation in South Africa. And, of course, we got a statement directly from SAP this week from Kandaswamy's boss, SAP Africa Managing Director Brett Parker, stating in no uncertain terms that he personally dismisses the allegations and considers them, quote, factually incorrect and unsubstantiated, unquote. And so, what do you make of this? Business behaving badly, huh?
Yeah, it's the age of exposure, man. It's the age of exposure. You know, I think the leadership in business is called to adopt a higher level we need to operate at a different level in terms of not only ethics but an understanding that in this day and age, forgiveness when you've defaulted as a leader is very difficult to come by. So it's very sad, but I think at the same time it's a good thing because we need more examples of the wrong thing sometimes to be able to get the right behavior. But what is probably the saddest thing is that bouncing back from scandals of this nature is virtually impossible because of the digital world that we live in. But like I always say, I mean, a bad situation is a good opportunity for anyone to learn from. So hopefully that's the spirit. It's never impossible to bounce back, but it's tough.
And so also trending on social media, this double standard that's become quite apparent where big business doesn't seem to be held to the same standard that, say, celebrities are or, government officials and that kind of thing. And granted, the pragmatic side of your brain should automatically know that they're not here for your health technically. But and while government should be always in the public interest, or and celebrities always should love you or whatever, but Beyonce should always be about trying to please you or whatever. But there is, we have to admit, some kind of double standard where banks can basically steal from people and then just get to a podium and say sorry, and then we must all just get on with our lives. It's a bit odd.
Yeah, it's a bit odd and it's a bit unfortunate. But I suppose there's also the reality that does my life change with or without Beyonce? Maybe not. But does my life change without a bank that I potentially have millions invested in? Yes, it does. Doesn't make it right, though. So I do think, in fact, that banks and organizations of that nature should probably be held to a higher account, in my view. There's lots of stuff that's happening from a governance perspective, all the king codes, etc., etc. And one would hope that those kind of things will drive the right behavior. But more importantly, I think there should be a higher penalty to be paid by banks and by institutions like that. Not only because they can afford it, but because it's kind of almost an accepted behavior. So if you get it wrong once, I mean, we didn't learn from the banks defaulting in America. We are now doing it ourselves. It happened in Brazil as well. So I mean, I think the behavior itself needs to be penalized to the extent that it should actually be a moment in time for anybody in a bank, in an executive team or CEO to go, you know what, that's something that we never want to ever do again. Whereas currently the punitive measure is kind of like, all right, it was bad, we got slapped on the hand, but if we have to do it again in future, if we get away with it, we'll do it type thing. So I think that's probably more the problem, is that what precedent are you setting, for people that are looking in and potentially executives that may be sitting through those times.
And what's now been billed as potentially the trial of the century in Korea with Samsung's chairman going on trial, has been preceded by reports of him pretty much running the company from his jail cell. So those kind of things don't serve to to give me a sense that corporations are as committed to best practice and as far as just doing the right thing as I wish they were.
Yeah, which is, once again, I mean, some of these internal governance issues are failing, if that's even possible. And I suppose context is also important when you're running a business in certain contexts, and you're given ultimate power as a chairman or as a CEO. That in itself is problematic. But for what's surprising for me is for an organization as big as Samsung to have or not apparently have the checks and balances in place. That's worrying. Smaller businesses, somewhat you can understand, but at that level, it's just completely acceptable. But as you said, the trial is this week, so let's see what comes out of it. I'm pretty sure there'll be more moments and more shock and horror. So let's watch the wires, as they say.
Pretty much. So let's talk Safaricom. It's interesting. Less than 2 weeks since Kenyan banks basically got together to launch a concerted assault on M-Pesa. Just only 10 years after M-Pesa launched. Just 10 years. It only took them 10 years to come up with a plan. But anyway, so this is less than 2 weeks since that's happened. And now there's this high-profile report circulating, put out by Analysis Mason, suggesting that the government, or regulators at least in Kenya, ought to consider forcing Safaricom to separate their mobile telco interests from their mobile money interests. And this is pretty much exactly what the banks were demanding when Safaricom wanted to launch M-Pesa 10 years ago. There's something to me suggests that this is a coordinated situation, but I could be wrong. Nevertheless, what do you make of the dominance that Safaricom enjoys in East Africa thanks to M-Pesa in a space that's pretty much outside of what they were initially incorporated to do? Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. If I remember correctly, I could be wrong, so don't quote me on this, but the government of Kenya had some stake or some interest in Safaricom, from what I understood. So previously, obviously, there was latent benefit for them not separating, obviously understanding the commercial opportunity. Whatever's happened subsequent to that may have revealed, obviously, the extent to which it could become a problem for a bank to have that kind of power, so you're essentially putting financial power together with information and technology power, which is a very dangerous combination on any given day. So I think yes, the competitors back then were right to have asked for it to be separated, and I think maybe the ethical issues around having those two functions sitting so close together and having such a monopoly has become real. I also think it's going to create a very skew market in terms of the forces. So if you've got such a dominant player on both banking and telecoms, what does that do to pricing? What does that do to movement of talent? You eventually will cannibalize the market, which I think is the danger here. So I think the chickens may have come home to roost, but I think hopefully sanity has prevailed. But let's see how that goes.
I've said often on the show that mobile telcos, I reckon, have currently the most valuable data set in private hands of any entity on the continent, and you see sort of the politics of that playing out in debates around spectrum and its reallocation or allocation, in sort of government contracts around big data management and that kind of thing. And really the sub theme is governments trying to be like, listen, we missed this boat last time in terms of like truly plugging into the most valuable data set possible. We're not about to try and do it again. And sometimes you see an overcompensation where, regulation goes all the way, in a direction that's going to impede innovation on one hand. And then you've got, commercial interests on the other, just trying to basically profiteer till, kingdom come.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting fact that you're mentioning, because if you think about the mobile, your number, those 10 digits or whatever it is, it's essentially like an ID, right? That's a footprint which, as you said, in the wrong hands could be a problem. But the more technologically advanced people get, and the more there's registrations, it's just simply going to proliferate. So the situation doesn't get better. It only gets better by being able to separate those two powers. So, as I said, hopefully sanity prevails. But I think ultimately it's not a bad thing that request is happening.
The CEO of Safaricom, Colimo, I can't remember his first name, he's come out pretty much. I read a quote. I wasn't there to hear him say it, but he said it's a stupid idea. Stupid was in the sentence.
Obviously, you'd say it's a stupid idea.
So I'm sensing he doesn't like the idea.
No, it's going to affect what he gets measured by. It's going to affect what he makes. Obviously, he doesn't like the idea. No, it wouldn't be in his best interest, unless he's the kind of man that likes to serve humanity before his interests. But somehow, I don't know. I don't think so.
Well, we'll see, Mr. Collymore, if you get your way, and certainly if the regulators see things exactly how you do. Now, for our last story of the week, let's talk mobile money. Now, two venture capital interests, the Netherlands-based Velocity Capital and the US-based Quona Capital, have led a Series A investment round in the South African mobile payments startup Yoko. Now, it's telling, I feel, that Yoko had to cross the oceans to find suitable partners to support their bid to sort of build on the success of enabling something like 6,500 South African merchants to accept card payments, totaling a rather impressive 1 billion rand a year. And I'm sorry to my listeners outside of South Africa, I didn't do the calculation as I normally do in US dollars, but put it in Google and see what that makes. It's still a substantial amount of money for such a small business, essentially a startup started by these four individuals. And it certainly appears to me that Quona and Velocity Capital have snapped up a peach, if you like, from right under the noses of Africa's venture capital and institutional investment community, yeah?
Yeah, it's sad, and I think it perpetuates this unfortunate reality that you export the coal from Africa, you send it somewhere else, and someone sells it back to you in a different format, you know. And whether you look at entertainment, Trevor Noah, or you look at Yoko, the principle is the same: is that locally we are not able to see value, even if it's right under our noses. And I just think there's a psychology around African venture capital companies and startups that undervalues our own ecosystem. It undervalues what we can produce. Doesn't inherently think that we do produce or are worth producing much, and therefore it's a lot easier for a lot of startups to go and find money and appreciation elsewhere. Then what happens? Yoko comes back and they're superstars, and it's post the fact. We lose all those foreign trades. Those foreign outflows of money are going to Netherlands and where's the other place?
The US.
The US. So we lose out. So I think ultimately it's perpetuating something that has been happening for a long time. It's just getting a little bit more sophisticated. I just hope that it's a wake-up call to venture capitalists to be a little bit more patient with their capital, because Yoko's been around for a while and they've been having lots of conversations. But also, for goodness sake, let's take risks in businesses that are born in our in our backyards. Let's take risks in those businesses. I mean, at some point, it has to change that we're relying on the validation from a Western market that we're actually producing amazing stuff. It's a complete frustration to me. But then again, big up to Yoko. Well done. Big up for that. It's not something that should be smirked at. And I think we will be seeing many more of those success stories. I just hope that the root capital more and more is coming from Africa as opposed to elsewhere.
I do have to tip my hat, though, to some of what I'm seeing in terms of organizing, in terms of angel investment interests on the continent starting to organize themselves. Shout out to the African Business Angels Network, for example. Shout out to, the handful of homegrown venture capitalists that are targeting, startups at the seed stage. My gripe is primarily with institutional investment, which typically are required to take a deal from a good a really good idea that's been proved to potentially an international thing. And so we're talking pre-Series A sometimes, but Series A and beyond. I mean, we need to start seeing our local institutional investment fraternity, show sufficient love. I mean, Dominique Collett, many of you will know, a good friend of the show. She's senior investment executive at Rand Merchant Insurance Holdings. But before that, she was co-founder of a mobile money startup from South Africa called Time, which stands for Take Your Money Everywhere. Pretty clever. Now, Time's mission was basically to provide affordable yet, at the same time, commercially viable financial solutions for the unbanked low-income market here in South Africa. And in February 2015, Time was famously acquired by the Commercial Bank of Australia for a rumored $40 million, an amount that, of course, I've asked Dominique many times to confirm. She never does. And the deal came together after Collett and her founders had pitched their businesses to various big-name VC and institutional investment guys on the continent. I mean, and she told me basically they were never taken seriously. They literally had to cross the seas to get Australia interested. And now the most frustrating thing has happened of late. It's taken all the sort of technology upgrades they've done to their system, the relationships they've made in countries like India, Vietnam, right here in South Africa, for a billionaire local investor, Patrice Motsepe, and his local VC, I think it's African Rainbow Holdings, to finally decide, hey, maybe 10% of this thing would be good for us. And let's be honest, CBA is only offering that 10% because of the potential access to the market, partnering with something like African, Rainbow Holdings provides in terms of ticking BEE boxes, Black Economic Empowerment boxes, and getting the right of way, as it were, to corporate South Africa, commercial South Africa. And it just frustrates me that this might be just another telling of the same story in as far as Yoko's concerned. Not to take anything away from the guys and what they've achieved, but should they have had to travel that far to get this love?
No, they shouldn't have. As I've said, I think it's ultimately very sad. And also, if you think about Africa Rainbow Holdings coming late to the party and trying to put in their money, the value's already been realized, right? So they're buying into a higher valuation. They're paying their 10 million and getting their percent. But ultimately, that's not returning the value that we need back into the economy. It's still an extremely minority stake. As you're saying, it's more a legislation issue as opposed to a value-adding issue. Is it a good business move? Given that you had probably had the opportunity to be first in line, I think not. I think it's coming late, and I think it's essentially just trying to put your hat in the ring because you didn't have the balls to take the risk. But once again, money's money, as they say. I think it's more the mentality around how we're spending the money, and to come late into a deal that was right under your nose is almost it's an admission of failure in my view. A business that probably, I think Africa Rainbow Holdings are based somewhere in Sandton. Time was literally in Rosebank, and you missed it, and the deal went over there, it came back, and then you bought in. It's doesn't make sense. But as I said, let's not take anything away from what they've done and where it's at. I think we need a stronger call to action as far as institutional investment, as well as the many seed round and VC companies that are starting to get a little bit warm. I don't think you can critique the fact that it's increasing. I will, however, say that I think the rate that it's increasing is the problem. We don't have enough success stories, and we make a big deal about the ones that we do have, but there should be a lot more stories than we are seeing, given the volume of problems we're trying to solve across education, across finance, across health, across all those things. There should be a higher rate of these kind of things or these kind of stories, I think anyway.
As you're speaking, an example of that actually came to mind in the form of Investec, which it was reported some weeks ago in Bloomberg that they've basically become the go-to funder for the rooftop solar, sector in the US. They've pretty much dominated that industry as far as financing the developers as well as backing the contracts to individual homeowners. Now, institutional investors in the US typically would have been shunning those kind of arrangements because they'd require a different kind of thinking, hybrid commercial models that they weren't willing to engage. Perhaps the risk profile didn't suit their taste, and Investec is cleaning up there. We need to start to see that sort of innovation, I feel, at that sort of level in terms of institutional funding start to happen at home. And we also don't give the startup community on the continent, in South Africa and elsewhere, the notion that unless you've got a ticket to Silicon Valley, Australia, or Israel, or wherever else you think the money's at, your startup will never see, you'll never see the close of a Series A. That's just something I feel very strongly about.
Yeah, and we have to disprove that. And as I said, we all have a responsibility, especially those of us that are putting our hats in the ring. We've got a responsibility to change that. I think, yes, it's great to have your eyes set on Silicon Valley. Yes, the money might come across easier. Seed funding being 250K here to get that kind of money, you have to sell a kidney. But, we have to start somewhere. And I think starting somewhere means now that a lot of people have got the exposure and the understanding, we need to be doing the correct things in our markets to make sure we get to that level of realization. For an Investec, I think it's genius to be investing in solar panels because I think that the boomerang effect is that at some point we know electricity is a problem on our continent. So they're positioning themselves, I think, in a very clever way. Yes, obviously they have the balance sheet to do so, but institutional investments that are investing almost to learn and get ahead of the curve so that they can bring value locally, I think that's a very smart move. You might take a bit of a hit in the next 3 to 5 years, but ultimately when you have the knowledge and you've got the understanding, scaling that here is going to be very easy, and then you've got a continent to expose. So
we're talking scale to the extent of something like 808, I stand to be corrected because it's not in front of me, but $880 million worth of funding to the tune of something like 1.5 billion. I mean, that's what they've done, I believe in 2016 alone. As a South African investor in the US, in an area that's right under the noses of investors that are preferring to fund sort of larger infrastructure plays like solar farms and the wind farms and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think to me, it's an example of what ought to be happening right here.
Yeah, I think as I said, they are examples, and I think the problem is that they're few and far between. The ones that are working, we should be learning from.
And so we're going to round up the show by just delving a little bit into some of the things we talked about at FCB Africa Conference 2017. It's really nice to share the stage with you, by the way. Shout out to the guys at FCB, one of Africa's leading advertising agencies, without a doubt. It was really fun to speak to their people. 30 African countries represented in that audience. Was really cool, really eclectic, a vibe to speak to. And there were things that you said that really stuck with me. Your talk about, pretty much summing it up, how important it is for us to start to realize how good for business doing good business is. So speak to that a little bit and how you sort of came to that epiphany. I don't know if it's under wraps for now, because I know you're working on a book and you obviously on the speaker circuit, but I mean, there's the thing you call the Kalenga Conundrum, which I really like. I don't know if you want to talk about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure thing. Look, I mean, I think for me, a lot has come full circle. I've been very fortunate to have, started out a business kind of from scratch to being kind of a small enterprise. And I went into the corporate world, and I've worked for two really great brands, and I've worked, most recently for Facebook. And I've just been observing the different things that I've seen around how it is that you create a business that will be future-proof, basically. Trying to understand the principle of sustainability and trying to understand what leadership is required for us to show up in our best selves in the future. A lot of it also has got to do with me challenging myself. If I'm going to be building business and creating value, what is it that I need to be thinking about to make that happen? So my talk essentially, act like a human, think like a brand, tries to capture that spirit at its core. I explore kind of the human aspect of leadership and of building brands and of being a business person. And quite right, there's a term that I've coined called the Kalenga Conundrum, which essentially asks the question about two lines that should be intersecting or closer together. The first line is the Human Development Index, which essentially is a measure of how well or the wellness state of human beings is across the globe. It's a number between 0 and 1 typically. And that number is essentially, the graph is going up, but it's going up at a decreasing rate. So we're not seeing any kind of exponential change in the wellness of human beings, which is a problem.
And that's happening at the same time as exponential growth in as far as tech and innovation and its adoption, which is crazy.
Absolutely. And then the conundrum is, surely as tech gets better and we can send people to the moon, we should be able to feed people on Earth type thing. So the conundrum for me is, I really want to dedicate my life trying to understand how we get technology to serve humanity better. And in so doing, we're lifting the levels of wellness for everybody involved. And Africa, because we've got the lowest human development index out of all the countries and out of all the continents, I think even more so for us, that we need to find the problems and solve them, and technology is now at our beck and call. So essentially that's what my talk was about, and as I said, I'm hoping to dedicate my life to solving some of those big issues, and hopefully we can make money while we're doing that. So that's
and shameless plug, guys, if you've never heard this man talk and just unpack everything he's learned in his relatively short life, I mean, because you and I are pretty much age mates, and if you haven't done that, guys, I mean, just make a plan, try and follow his moves on social or whatever, and figure out where he's going to speak to listen to this, because he's not going to unpack it on the show. We don't have time, right now. And besides, you need to get the real thing. What I can tell you is how it got me thinking at a personal level, because on this show, I typically externalize stuff, and it's usually over there. It's that company that should be doing this. It's that industry that should be doing this. I feel like startup founders should be doing this, and your talk made me stop and think, okay, so about the role of tech in my life, which was what my talk was about, the rise of hybridity, and how I've seen how something as basic, I know it's so cliche, how something as basic as Facebook or SoundCloud, Canva or flipping Instagram, iRig Mike, how that has fundamentally changed the trajectory. How harnessing technologies that didn't exist 2, 3, 5, 15 years ago has fundamentally changed my life for the better and opened up, prospects that I didn't imagine would be open to me at this time. And the question is, what am I doing to answer the conundrum issue, where with all this access to technology and growth in my life, what's my community benefiting from it? How is Zimbabwe a better country because I'm a citizen of Zimbabwe still? How is South Africa a better country because I'm a resident here? How is Africa, a better place? How is the continent richer? Yeah. How is the world richer because I'm here? And because I have these tools and the access to the knowledge, and so that's actually how it's touchy-feely. It ended up a little touchy-feely, but yeah, it really got me thinking, and I want to thank you for that, man.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, and that's the idea. I mean, I don't think anybody's got a silver bullet to solve all the problems, and sometimes you also feel a little bit disenfranchised or disempowered because we tend to want to have grand visions to change things which is good. But I think the more important thing is what's the next step that you can do to fix things, and that typically will add up to the next step and the next step. So I think the start is more important than the grand vision, and I just hope, as I said, that hit home. And once again, as I said, it was great. It was great sharing the stage with you. We've been watching each other over the last couple of years, and a great concept around hybridity. It was good to see. Kind of the sum total of all of your experiences come together, and to learn a little bit about you as well. There's some things I found out there that I did not know.
I hopped on the couch real quick.
Yeah, there's some interesting backstory about your Montessori education.
Oh yeah, there's that. I can assure you. It's usually one of the more unexpected facts about me. People are like, you got Montessori, like they've got Montessori preschooling in Zimbabwe. Yes, they do. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it was good to see that your hippiness comes from a root place. You didn't choose this life. This life chose you.
Yeah. I like that. No. I am definitely a product of my environment, at least in part. So listen, thanks so much for being here. It's been quite an episode. Before I say goodbye, one last time, I want to say a big thank you to GoDaddy for sponsoring this episode of the African Tech Roundup. Really, really grateful for their support of the show. Remember that you too can buy your own domain name. You can build your site or use any of GoDaddy's business tools to save 30% at trygodaddy.com/African Tech. That's trygodaddy.com/African Tech to save yourself 30%. And so that's it for this week, man. Do join me again next week on africantechroundup.com. But in the meantime, of course, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at African Roundup. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/African Tech Roundup. And of course, if you'd like to be part of the show, which we always love, we'd love to hear from you. Drop us an email via hello@africantechroundup.com, or better than an email, send us an audio note that we can play on the show so you can have your voice heard across the world. Now, Musa, it'd be totally inappropriate and stupid of me if I didn't let everyone know how they can follow your moves, where they can find you, sir, whether they want to just follow you on social, hear you speak, book you to speak, buy your book, all of those good things. Where can people find you?
You can find me, my website is kalenga.me, that's KALENGA.me, and I'm on all the social platforms. I'm on Twitter at Musa Kalenga, Facebook Musa Kalenga, LinkedIn Musa Kalenga, so all of it just my name, my surname. And if you want to book me, go to my site, or Iconoclasts, who are my agent. You can have a chat with them. But I look forward to chatting.
Proper, man. Thanks again, man. You get the last and the biggest thank you on this show this week. Thank you so much for joining me. I think you've made it so much richer. You've brought a vibe. You're actually the very first person I've had on the show, at least live with me, presenting the show for 2017. So shout out for that, man.
Wow, look at that. Thanks, my guy. It's always good sharing the mic, sharing the stage. Hopefully we share a lot more in future. So thank you very much. And Africa Tech Roundup people, keep supporting. This man's doing good things.
Oh, that's very kind. That was Musa Kalenga, folks. I'm still Andile Masugu. Until next time, do take care, Africa.